As projected, and indeed delivered, Kemi Badenoch is the leader of His Majesty's loyal opposition, which means the Conservative Party have turned their backs on the idea of leaving the ECHR because that's what Generic stood for. What you're going to get with Kemi Badenoch is more of the same. Pretty much exactly the same as the last 14 years. I've got to tell you, one thing they don't understand, it isn't about the individuals. The Conservative brand is broken.
The great Conservative exodus, when loyalty crumbles. Right, before we dive into this absolute political car crash, do me a favor and smash that subscribe button, because British politics is serving up drama faster than a Westminster tea trolley, and you'll want front row seats for what's coming next. Trust me, you don't want to miss a single episode of this slow-motion implosion. So picture this, a Conservative Party conference, 4 days when the Tories are supposed to be putting on their best face, schmoozing donors, and pretending everything's absolutely tickety-boo. Instead, 20 of their own councillors have decided to stage what can only be described as a coordinated political divorce, jumping ship to reform UK like rats fleeing the HMS Britannia. And we're not talking about backbenchers in forgotten constituencies. We're talking about Hampshire, Dorset, Basingstoke, proper Conservative heartland, the kind of places where until recently you could stick a blue rosette on a garden gnome and it would get elected. The timing? Chef's kiss. Absolutely brutal. Nothing says we believe in this party quite like announcing your defection whilst your former colleagues are literally down the road singing Jerusalem and pretending they've got a plan. Let's start with Barry Dunning. Shall we? This Lymington councillor on Hampshire County Council didn't just leave quietly. Oh no. He called it his Freedom Day. Freedom Day. As if he'd been held hostage by Conservative politics for years, finally breaking free from his shackles. The man's been campaigning against parking restrictions on Lymington High Street, a policy introduced by his own party at county level, and is absolutely fuming. 27 shops closed because of these parking restrictions. 27. The council's raking in £60,000 in parking fees whilst the high street dies a slow, painful death, hemorrhaging business rates that dwarf that pittance. And here's the kicker. The scheme was meant to roll out to New Milton, Hythe, and Romsey but mysteriously never did. So Lymington gets to be the sacrificial lamb, whilst everyone else carries on as normal. You can almost hear the frustration in his voice when he talks about sleepless nights and soul-searching. This wasn't a snap decision made over a pint. This was a man watching his community crumble and his party doing absolutely nothing about it. He said joining reform gives him the freedom to speak his mind, which rather begs a question. What exactly was stopping him before? Was he muzzled? Silence? Or did he just finally realize that the Conservative Party he thought he knew had left him behind long before he left them? Then we've got Dwayne Farr and Cameron Adams over in Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, making history as the first Reform UK councillors on BCP Council. Farr's been mulling this over for ages apparently, because, and here's where it gets properly spicy, he doesn't think the Conservatives managed Brexit properly. Brexit, the thing they banged on about for years, the thing they claimed as their crowning achievement, the thing that was supposed to define modern conservatism. And even their own councillors are sitting there going, yeah, you made an absolute dog's dinner of that, didn't you? The irony is absolutely delicious. These people won elections on the back of getting Brexit done, and now those same elected officials are saying it wasn't done right. You couldn't write this stuff. What's even more extraordinary is the domino effect in Kinson Ward. All the councillors are now sitting under different party banners than when they were elected in 2023. Michelle Dower jumped from Labour to Independent in August, and now Farr and Adams have hopped to Reform. The voters of Kinson must be feeling like they are watching a particularly chaotic episode of musical chairs, except nobody bothered to tell them the music had stopped. Paul Miller, former mayor of Basingstoke, is not holding back either. He says people are disillusioned with the Conservative Party, fed up with double talk, double standards, double speak. He wants clear vision and stability, and apparently none of the major parties are delivering. That's quite the indictment, isn't it? A former mayor essentially saying the entire British political establishment is one big pantomime, and is no longer willing to play along. What's fascinating is his distinction between the local party and the national one. He makes it clear he's not angry with the local Conservatives. They did their best apparently, but the rot comes from above. Westminster's disconnect from local politics has never been more obvious. These councillors deal with real issues: bins not being collected, potholes swallowing cars whole, high streets dying, and they are getting directive from on high that make absolutely no sense on the ground. Then they are expected to defend these policies to angry constituents whilst keeping a straight face and pretending it's all part of some grand master plan. Now let's talk about Reform UK for a moment, because they are absolutely loving this. 20 councillors in one go? That's not just a coup, that's a statement. They are positioning themselves as a party for disaffected Conservatives, the ones who think the Tories have gone soft, lost their way, become indistinguishable from the centre-left blob they claim to oppose. Whether you agree with Reform's politics or not, and plenty don't, you have to admire the political opportunism here. They are not just picking up random independents. They are systematically targeting Conservative councillors in Conservative areas, pulling them across with promises of actually standing for something, anything, other than managerial decline and triangulation. Their spokesperson said they are delighted to have Barry on board with all the enthusiasm of a football club that's just signed a star striker. And why wouldn't they be delighted? Every defection is a news story. Every news story is publicity, and every bit of publicity chips away at the Conservative brand. But here's where it gets properly interesting. Richard Fuller, Conservative MP and Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, has come out swinging, calling these defections quite a significant risk bet. He's trotted out the old Conservative principles: family as a foundation society, defense of the realm, sound economy, the whole 9 yards, and is claiming Reform is abandoning some, not all, but some of those principles quite significantly. It's a fascinating defense because it's essentially admitting that Reform shares most Conservative principles. They just diverged on certain points. So what are those points? Immigration? Brexit implementation? Speed of promised change? Fuller doesn't spell it out, which is rather convenient. It's also rich hearing lectures about principled conservatism from a party that spent the last few years lurching from crisis to crisis, burning through prime ministers faster than most people go through toilet paper, and spectacularly losing an election to Labour. Glass houses, stones, you know how it goes. The bigger picture here is absolutely fascinating, though, because these defections aren't happening in isolation. They're a symptom of a Conservative party in absolute freefall, searching for identity, purpose, relevance. They got absolutely walloped in the general election, hemorrhaged seats to Labour, the Lib Dems, even Reform in certain areas, and now they're losing councillors to Reform as well. It's death by 1,000 cuts. Local government is often the bedrock of political parties. It's where you build your base, identify talent, keep your finger on the pulse of what voters actually care about. When you start losing councillors in your heartlands, that's not just embarrassing, it's existential. Because if you can't hold Hampshire, Dorset, and Basingstoke, where exactly can you hold? What these defections really highlight is a massive gulf between what the Conservative Party thinks it stands for and what its own elected members think it stands for. Barry Dunning talking about parking restrictions might sound trivial to the Westminster bubble, but it's life and death for a high street, for small businesses, for communities. These are the battles that actually matter to voters, not whether Britain has the most robust Brexit possible or the precise wording of some international treaty. When your own councillors are saying they can't speak freely, can't represent their constituents properly, can't get listened to by the party hierarchy, you've got a serious problem. And the Conservative response so far? Radio silence from central office. They've been contacted for comment and apparently had nothing to say, which speaks volumes. Either they don't have an answer, or they don't think it matters enough to warrant one. Both options are damning. The Reform UK angle is intriguing too because it raises questions about what happens next. Are these 20 defections the end of it, or just the beginning? How many other Conservative councillors are sitting there right now, watching this unfold, wondering if they should make the jump too? Political parties rely on loyalty, tradition, a sense of belonging, but when those bonds break down, when people stop believing in the brand, defections can become contagious. One person leaves and suddenly everyone else starts questioning why they are staying. It's tribal loyalty evaporating in real time. And Reform UK is there with open arms, ready to welcome anyone who feels a Conservative party has betrayed the more conservative principles or whatever narrative they are spinning this week. Here's the thing that really gets me, though. These councillors were elected as Conservatives. Voters in Lymington, Kinson, Basingstoke, they put their ex next to a Conservative candidate, and now they are getting a Reform UK councillor instead. No by-election, no second vote, just a unilateral decision that their political representation has fundamentally changed. Now you can argue they are voting for the individual, not the party, and there's some truth to that at local level, but let's not pretend party affiliation doesn't matter. It matters enormously. It determines what policies get pushed, what priorities get set, how votes get cast on contentious issues. The voters of these wards are getting something they didn't vote for, and whilst that's perfectly legal and happens all the time, it does raise uncomfortable questions about democratic legitimacy and political integrity. So where does this leave us? The Conservative Party is in crisis. That much is obvious. They are losing members, losing councillors, losing elections, and losing any sense of what they actually stand for beyond not being Labour. Reform UK is on the rise, hoovering up the disaffected right, positioning themselves as a true inheritors of Conservative politics, whilst the actual Conservative Party flounders about trying to work out whether they should move right to win back these voters or move centre to appeal to the country at large. Classic strategic paralysis. Meanwhile, Labour's sitting in government probably enjoying every second of this circus because as long as the right is busy eating itself, they can govern relatively unmolested. And the British people? Well, we're watching the party that was in power for 14 years tear itself apart in spectacular fashion, whilst wondering who's actually going to fix the potholes, keep the shops open, and make anything work properly. That's it for today. If you enjoyed watching Conservative Party's slow motion collapse, you're going to love what's coming next because British politics is serving up absolute chaos on a silver platter, and we're here for all of it. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single moment of this glorious mess. Drop a like if you think these defections are just the beginning. And I'll see you in the next one where we'll doubtless have even more political carnage to dissect. Until then, stay cynical, stay informed, and remember, in British politics, loyalty lasts about as long as a politician's promise.